Welcome back, everyone. Today's topic is one that is sure to spark conversation. And we are seeing this white professor delivering a powerful message. She is arguing that racism remains one of the biggest problems in America, and she is calling on white Americans to reflect on their role in addressing it. So, let's talk about what this message means and why discussions like this often generate such strong reactions. Let's get into it. I'll be back.
I'm sure you have an opinion on the topic, and I don't know virtually anyone in this room. And yet I am confident to say the following. If you are white and you have not devoted years of sustained study, struggle, and focus on this topic, your opinions are necessarily limited, superficial, and uninformed. Wow, how can I say that when I don't even know you? I mean, maybe you've been to Costa Rica. Maybe you have multiracial nieces and nephews. Maybe you were in Teach for America. After 20 years of doing this work, I feel very clear about the following. There is something profoundly anti-Black in this culture. And in the white mind, Black people are the ultimate racial other. We have the most energy about Black people. We have the most resentment and anxiety about Black people. And when I have a very short period of time with white people and I want you to get in touch with your early messages, I ask you to think about Black people, right? And anti-Blackness, there are poles, right? White is here and Black is here. And I don't have time to get into it, but there is no white without Black. There's a deep need for white, the white collective. There is no superiority without inferiority, right? So there are poles, and anti-Blackness cuts across all groups, including Black people. The darker you are, the more compounded the oppression. And while I'm here to challenge white people and our complacency, there's a very sensitive couple questions I think peoples of color have to ask themselves. One, what does anti-Blackness look like in our group, and who have I aligned with? Right? So having mentioned history, anti-Blackness, it's a system, I want to just give you one glance at the trajectory of anti-Blackness since the beginning of this country to the current time to illustrate those points. And this slide will be deliberately dense, and we can think about it as state-sanctioned organized crime, quite frankly, against African Americans. And it begins with kidnapping and 300 plus years of enslavement, torture, rape, and brutality, and it carries on. About 1/4 of the way in here, bans on testifying against whites, and you are in my lifetime. 1/4 of the way in that slide, you were in my lifetime where it was technically legal to murder Black people in this country. I would love to never again hear another white person say, I didn't own slaves, as if that ended on that day. And about halfway in at employment discrimination, you are now in 2019 with copious empirical evidence. And if you don't know some of these things, that's on you to educate yourself. But I'm going to pick it up in 2019, and let me repeat, copious empirical evidence. Employment discrimination, educational discrimination, bias laws in policing, white flight, subprime mortgages, mass incarceration, school-to-prison pipeline, disproportionate special education referrals and punishments, testing, tracking, school funding, biased media, voter suppression, cultural mockery, historical omissions, unaddressed trauma, to name a few. It's a system. It's the system we're in, and none of us could be and none of us were exempt from its forces. And this system is not interrupted by friendliness. The system is not interrupted because I smile at Black people when I pass them by or go to lunch on occasion. And African Americans are not and have never been in the position to do this to the entire white collective, and the white collective has always been and continues to be in the position to do this to African Americans. There is no such thing as reverse racism. Okay? I can say it because nothing in dominant culture gives us the information we would need to have an informed opinion on arguably the most complex, nuanced social dilemma for the last several hundred years. For example, you can get through graduate school in this country without ever discussing racism, can you not? You can get through teacher education in this country without ever discussing racism. And if you're in a progressive teacher education program, you'll have one required course, multicultural of some sort. But that doesn't mean you'll be discussing racism. You might just be talking about how to introduce ethnic authors in February. Okay? You can get through law school. You can be seen as qualified to lead anything, virtually. Right? So the first challenge for those of us who are white is humility.
As you continue watching, you know conversations about racism are rarely simple. People come from different backgrounds. People have different experiences, and people often see the same issue in very different ways. Some believe racism continues to shape opportunities in housing, in education, in employment, and the criminal justice system. Others argue that progress has been made and that the focus should be on bringing people together rather than emphasizing divisions. So if this professor is encouraging people to examine prejudice and bias, that is not necessarily about blaming every individual. Instead, it can be understood as a call for self-reflection, asking whether our assumptions, words, or actions contribute to unfair treatment of others. Let's get into the remaining clips. I'll be back.
The centrality of whiteness. I want to name that. And trust me, I've gone home many a night and tossed and turned over that. Where I always land is that it is a both and, right? To not use this position in this way, for me, is to really be white. And I'd like to be a little less white, right? And a little less white, by the way, does not mean a little more Italian American. Okay? It means a little less oppressive, quite frankly, a little less oblivious and arrogant and ignorant and certain, and a little more humble and curious and vulnerable. Right? The last thing that I want to acknowledge is that nothing in society gives any of us good information about how this works. And so hopefully, again, as an insider, I can offer something to people of color. I do think people of color know about white fragility way more than I ever will. But again, I do have an insider's perspective. So let me say a little bit about some of the challenges of trying to educate white people on racism. And a great example is I was recently going to give a similar talk to a large tech company, and before they would sign the contract, the legal department wanted to see my slides. And when they got to this slide, they actually asked me if I could take the word white off the slide. To which I replied, "You really should have vetted me before you called." No, I won't. All right. First of all, I've never met a white person who doesn't have an opinion on racism, have you? If you are not sure all white people have an opinion on racism, just bring it up the next time you're around a bunch of white people, maybe tonight when you have a drink in Noe Valley. Okay. I don't think you can grow up in this society or spend any significant time here or any other Western-oriented white settler colonial context and not develop an opinion on racism. That doesn't make it informed. So I'm going to say perhaps my first controversial thing. If you are white, I'm sure you have an opinion on the topic, and I don't know virtually anyone in this room. And yet I am confident to say the following. If you are white and you have not devoted years of sustained study, struggle, and focus on this topic, your opinions are necessarily limited, superficial, and uninformed. Wow, how can I say that when I don't even know you? I mean, maybe you've been to Costa Rica. Maybe you have multiracial nieces and nephews. Maybe you were in Teach for America. I can say it because nothing in dominant culture gives us the information we would need to have an informed opinion on arguably the most complex, nuanced social dilemma for the last several hundred years. For example, you can get through graduate school in this country without ever discussing racism, can you not? you can get through teacher education in this country without ever discussing racism. And if you're in a progressive teacher education program, you'll have one required course, multicultural of some sort. But that doesn't mean you'll be discussing racism. You might just be talking about how to introduce ethnic authors in February. Okay? You can get through law school. You can be seen as qualified to lead anything virtually. Right? So the first challenge for those of us who are white is humility. I want you to know that I'm not standing in front of the choir right now. Even if you volunteered to come, there is no white choir. I am not the choir. And the moment I think I'm the choir, I'm going to be complacent and arrogant and probably defensive about any suggestion that I might not be as much of the choir as I think that I am. Second challenge is that if I do a good job, this won't be comfortable, particularly for the white people in the room, for the whole time. The status quo is racism, and as a white person, that's comfortable for me virtually 24/7. So I'm not here to uphold that. I want to unsettle that, because we will not get where we need to go from a place of white comfort. The key is what we do with those moments of discomfort if I manage to stimulate them. We can certainly use them as a way out. We can also ideally use them as a relatively rare way in. Why does this unsettle me? What would it mean if it were true? And there are two places where white people begin to get uncomfortable when I give a talk, whether you can consciously articulate it to yourself or not. The first place is how often I'm going to say the word white. So prepare yourself, about 100 times. And we're not used to being seen racially. And we're not used to having people proceed as if our race has meaning. And the second place where we can begin to get uncomfortable is that I am going to challenge the very precious ideology of individualism. And I'm going to do it by generalizing about white people all night long. And you're going to be just fine. Okay? It is a very precious ideology. In general, I'm talking about the white collective, we don't like to be generalized about. And so, just so you know, if I thought it was racist to generalize about white people, I wouldn't do it, so you don't have to send that email. You can actually ask yourself, well, might I be missing something if I don't understand it? Right? Rather than she must be doing that wrong. Okay? Yes, we are individuals. Of course, and I couldn't possibly hold every person's story in this room even if I wanted to. We are also members of a social group. By virtue of our membership in this social group, we could literally predict whether you and your mother were going to survive your birth, regardless of your age. We can predict how long you're going to live because you're a member of this social group. There's a collective experience to being white. There are shared messages. We are all swimming in the same water, right? And just like gender, the way you respond to gender socialization, your challenges to gender socialization, you may have them. There's variations, but nobody can avoid dealing with gender socialization and responding to it. It is the same with racial socialization, right? So every moment that you want to exempt yourself, try this. All right, she's saying most white people X, I was a Y. Okay, good for you. Okay, you were Y, most are X. How did Y set you up into the racial hierarchy you live in, swim in, grew up in, breathe in, right? It set you up differently than X set me up, but we both got set up. It's on you to use everything you see as unique about yourself and figure out how it set you up rather than exempted you. And finally, we don't tend to understand the systemic nature of racism. So let's just start there, and I'm going to do this the way that I always do this to explain the difference between personal prejudice that everybody has and systemic racism. So prejudice, prejudgment, everyone has it.
You know, these conversations always become difficult when people feel personally attacked, but challenging ideas and examining history does not have to mean condemning every member of a group. Constructive dialogue works best when it focuses on actions, on systems and solutions rather than stereotypes. What stands out to me is the importance of accountability. Every community has individuals who contribute positively and others who do harm. It's unfair to judge millions of people by the actions of a few regardless of race. At the same time, it's just important not to dismiss people's lived experiences. Many Americans have experienced discrimination while others genuinely feel misunderstood when these issues are discussed. Both realities can exist, and meaningful conversations require listening as well as speaking. If this professor's message encourages empathy, honesty, and a willingness to improve society, then that's a conversation worth having. Real progress comes when people are willing to acknowledge problems without assuming that everyone shares the same beliefs or behaviors. Let's say that history has shown that societies make progress when people from different backgrounds work together. And many important civil rights achievements happened because individuals of different races chose to stand for fairness, they chose to stand for equality, and also they chose to stand for justice. So instead of asking which group is the problem, perhaps a better question is what behaviors and attitudes keep communities divided? Could it be racism, prejudice, discrimination, and intolerance? All these can come from anyone, and confronting those attitudes benefits everyone. You know what? Healthy debate does not require hostility. It requires evidence. Healthy debate requires respect and also willingness to hear perspectives that challenge our own assumptions. And at the end of the day, discussions like these are not about winning arguments. They are about understanding one another and finding ways to build stronger communities. Now, thank you for watching. I'd just like to hear your thoughts. Do you think that public conversations about racism are helping America move forward? Or do you believe there is a better way to address these issues? Just share your thoughts in the comments. But remember to keep the discussion respectful. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, kindly don't forget to like the video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.